Hey, Melissa.
Hey,
Here we go.
here we go.
Another episode.
Another episode, week 6.
Week 6. I know. I got a notification on my email that congratulations, you're a podcaster. We have 5 episodes.
Yay!
And it's been good. I mean, I think we've talked about a lot of important things. Patients have, messaged us. They've been appreciative. They listen and they give feedback. So
Yeah.
yeah. And I feel like last week we did a good one. We talked about lower carbohydrates. And, this week we're kind of following along on that same line. But I guess we should do an intro first.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Common Sense Medicine podcast by Tim Chen and Melissa Wood. And you are,
Family nurse practitioner with additional training in lifestyle medicine.
that's right. And I am a family physician who is interested in integrative medicine and I guess population health. And of course, this podcast, like we've said before, is a podcast to try to make complex things common.
Yes.
Yeah, which is really funny because I'll just give you an example. Yesterday I had a patient, he told me I can't figure out why I'm gaining weight. I only eat once a day. I just have to snack a lot so I can eat once a day. And I had to stop for a second. I was like, wait, what? And then when we started getting okay, well, what do you snack on? I was like, just cookies and chips. I was like, and then the more we talked, he's like, you know what? That's probably why I'm not loose.
That's probably why.
Yeah. So essentially, right, we're trying to make these things that we don't realize people don't know. These are actually, we want to make them common.
That's right. Common sense.
Common sense. And today we are moving on that same nutrition, new diet, new year kind of, I guess, trend that a lot of people do. But we're talking about one that maybe has a little bit more data on heart disease, stroke, cholesterol, fatty liver, things that a lot of our listeners probably deal with.
Yeah. So some diets that we're talking about today have been a little bit more studied in the areas of metabolic health and outcomes long term. So we're talking about the Mediterranean diet, DASH diet. We'll talk a little bit plant-based. So some of these that have been studied a little bit more.
Yeah, yeah. And I guess most people, if they watch the news, these are the ones that usually physicians will recommend. But oftentimes it's kind of like a mystery box for patients. They hear the word Mediterranean and they're like, olives and, the countryside and working in the vineyard. And how does that look in Mississippi? And we'll be touching on things like that. And then, of course, our wrap up. What do we recommend? What do we think? Sustainability, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Perfect. Okay. Well, Melissa, I guess to start off, the concept behind the Mediterranean diet, the green Mediterranean diet, which is an offshoot of that, right? The plant-based diets, it's dealing with inflammation. So for those people who don't know, our body is always going through an oxidation reduction kind of situation. So your body does things, it causes inflammation, it causes oxidation. Your body has natural defenses to help calm that down because too much inflammation, chronic inflammation, actually causes a lot of disease.
That's right. Yeah. And so we have found that certain diets can reduce inflammation or can even make it worse. So we have found that a lot of these diets that are heavier in plants, which includes the Mediterranean, the DASH diet, plant-based, there's a lot more phytonutrients, antioxidants, all kinds of different nutrients that help to reduce inflammation in the body. So that can reduce things like our cardiovascular risk and things like that as well.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why, when y'all tell me, that you bought vitamin C or you bought a lot of vitamin D or you bought a lot of other vitamins, the concept, people might not know why they're taking those vitamins. And really most of the time they don't do probably a whole lot. But the concept is those vitamins are anti-inflammatory. Like they help with that oxidative stress. And so obviously we calm the inflammation down, we calm the oxidation. This should help with metabolic diseases like heart disease, stroke, and stuff like that. And in fact, some people, back in the day, we used to draw something called high sensitive CRP, which looks at blood level inflammation to give you a better predictor of, hey, is this person building plaque in their heart? Are they having issues? We don't do that blood test a lot now because if you just look at cholesterol, sugar, body weight, you can tell if there's a lot of inflammation going on.
Yeah.
So now let's talk about these diets, Melissa,
Yes.
because this is kind of your area.
Yeah.
Mediterranean. Talk to me about that one.
Yeah, so Mediterranean diet, and a lot of these diets were discovered just because of an observational type situation, and then additional studies were developed and followed just to kind of find how accurate just those observations are. So, we notice that people that live around the Mediterranean area, it's, part of that is even called a blue zone just because they have found that people in that area, there's a lot of people that live to be 100 years old or more. And so they're looking at these populations going, what makes this population different from everybody else who only lives to say 75 or whatever. And so some of that is dietary pattern. And so they found that these people eat a lot of fresh local produce that a lot of times they even grow themselves or at least at a local market. They also, if they do consume, say, meat or fish, it's usually locally sourced as well and usually much smaller amounts. Plenty of whole grains in the diet as well, less processed grains, and healthy fats like olive oil and in some cases wine as well, but that is not necessarily something to start if you don't already. So
Don't go get drunk.
No,
Yeah.
that was just kind of a side note that is kind of observed in that area. So anyway, they found that probably dietary pattern, but also just lifestyle pattern in general. These people are maybe walking to the market every day rather than like driving to a grocery store, 20 miles away once a week or whatever. Mm-hmm. So there's lots more walking. There's lots of community involvement, close-knit families and friends and communities. And that probably plays a part in the longevity of this particular group of people. But there have been studies now that really kind of look at the diet in itself and have found that there can be some beneficial outcomes.
And some of our colleagues are well-traveled, and they have I've been in Asia a lot, and you just notice, right, the life is different. Mm-hmm. I mean, in Taiwan, it's subways, it's buses. Driving a car is crazy expensive. And so subways and buses walking all day long just to live life. Like they're not going to a gym to reach an X amount of walking steps. They just live life.
Right.
And things like that happen. And of course, their culture is definitely much more family oriented and also active. I mean, it's not uncommon to see, especially in the Mediterranean area, a guy who's 87, 90 going to the vineyard, working the field still at that age. So right, all those play a role, but like you said, we've been able to isolate that nutrition plays a large role in that. And so, like you said, with this Mediterranean diet, again, the concept is inflammation control, but you mentioned foods like whole grains, which, in some circles of diet, they're like, no. But I think we want to point out that the whole grain they have there is different than the whole grain we have here. Ours is heavily processed.
Right.
Pounded to fine sugar, like fine flour, and
usually sugar added.
And sugar added, exactly. Yeah. People are like, why is your bread sweet? I was like, I don't.
Yeah. But, and you look at like a sourdough bread, which is literally just flour that has been fermented and add more flour. And so it really is like the basics. And that's kind of what they use.
Yeah. And, speaking of us studying this diet, I mean, there was recently a study that was published called Direct Plus, which essentially is looking at traditional healthy eating, which will actually make some, improvement. I guess that arm of patients just got regular health counseling. Then there's an arm where patients had the Mediterranean diet counseling. And the third arm in this study, they got Mediterranean diet plus green tea, plus duckweed, which sounds nasty. But essentially, if you Google it, it's like these little plants that grow on top of, bodies of water. And what they found out was that all three had some improvement in fatty liver and body fat composition and this thing called visceral fat, which is the fat around organs, and I guess if you look at a patient from outwardly, this is the beer belly, the beer gut, that the dad bod that I refuse to have. No, that is a problem, really, from a metabolic standpoint. I mean, we call it central adiposity. We know that's a problem. But patients who ate healthier, all three groups had improvement, but the group with the Mediterranean diet, the group with the green Mediterranean diet, which is that green tea, duckweed, they had significantly much more visceral fat reduction, which is amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you're right, just as far as the reduction of risk in those metabolic conditions related to the visceral fat is, really important when we're talking about any of these diets or just weight loss in general.
Yeah, exactly. Which I guess, and we'll talk about what these diets look like in real life in a minute. But, segueing that, the pointing it out is, okay, lots of whole foods, fresh foods. Lots of plants, which is, heavy in their diet. And I think variety is another thing. They eat a lot of different types of plants. It's not just kale and carrots and spinach, but it's bell pepper. It's all these things you see on Chopped that I don't know what they are. I'm like, what kind of plant is that? They eat things like that.
Right. Just a good variety overall. And, there's even studies now that are looking at how many different varieties of plants do we need each week to maintain a healthy gut microbiome and all different things like that. So, I think there's still a ways to go. But again, in observing cultures that do have a wide variety of plants, there tends to be a healthier gut microbiome. There tends to be less inflammation. There tends to be less cardiovascular disease. So, there's a ways to go there, but I think we're onto something.
Yeah. Which I guess segues nicely to our plant-based diet, which, Melissa, you actually are pretty plant-based.
Yeah, I do a lot of plant-based eating, not 100%, but, I think that's kind of the point is, getting a little bit more heavily plant-based to your diet without knowing that you don't have to be perfect to still make some changes in your overall health. So,
yeah. See, it's doable.
It is doable.
In Mississippi.
It is. And a lot of people complicate it just because it seems so different, but it's really not.
Yeah.
It's really not. So.
And it's actually not that much more expensive. I actually, this is kind of a drop in there. A lot of people say eating healthy is expensive. And I mean, if you do it a certain way, it can be expensive, but you don't have to. You don't have to overcomplicate it. And it's not that expensive.
Yeah. I mean, rice and beans, you can't get any less expensive than that. And especially with meat prices right now, I mean, it really is cheaper to eat plant-based.
Right. Yeah. I mean, most of the third world countries are heavily plant-based diets, because that's all they can afford.
That's what they can get. And yeah. Rice is abundant. Beans are abundant. Vegetables, most cultures grow in one form or another. So yeah, it's usually more readily accessible too for a lot of people.
Yeah. And I guess, I'm a study person. I like doing so. And you brought this study to my attention, the BROAD study, which essentially looking at whole food, kind of plant-based type of diet, looking at how it can reduce. I thought what was amazing in this study was weight loss, significant. I mean, a 4-point BMI drop.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're talking about a BMI of 30 to 26, or 30. So for most people, that's like 30, 40 pounds, off just eating more of a plant-based diet. And I think, like we brought up a couple of episodes ago, when you eat this much plants and this much whole foods, your body actually doesn't make that much insulin because there's no need to catch all that sugar. There's no need to catch all that processed food. And hence, if those levels lay low, plus the calories aren't, how much broccoli can you eat?
Exactly. Well, that's the thing. And that particular study was not calorie restricted at all. They told these people to eat whole food, plant-based diet without any calorie restriction. So they could eat as much as they wanted. They could eat until they were full, and they still showed a pretty significant weight loss overall. So.
Yeah. One time this is a kind of history story. I went to Taiwan and we went to this, we stayed at this hotel on the mountains just to be kind of cool. And there they had a heavy vegetarian type of diet. And I mean, the food was delicious, a lot of mushrooms, a lot of peppers, a lot of different types that I've never seen before, but they just eat and it tastes good. So you ate it and you could eat a lot and you still lose weight, which is amazing. And, I mean, the rice was still there, you know, the pasta was still there. Maybe I don't know what they do different, but just because of the shift, it's like, it's actually hard to keep weight on if you eat that type of way.
Yeah. You definitely find yourself getting full a lot faster than you anticipate. And I think also that's another reason they started studying this as well. Again, it's just kind of observational, you know, started out. You've probably heard of the 7-day Adventist study. But with that population, just from their religious beliefs, they eat a vegetarian diet typically. And so some people that were studying this found that that population of people tended, you know, to weigh less chance of cardiovascular disease, different things like that. And so then they made these other studies that were more randomized control to kind of break this down to see if it is truly diet that contributes to some of those outcomes.
Yeah. And like I said, I mean, a BMI, 4-point BMI drop, that's like more than what Ozempic can do.
Oh,
right?
for sure.
Yeah. Those are huge. And so I guess what we're saying here is what you eat makes a big difference. Obviously, how much you eat makes a difference, but the food quality and things like that make a big, big difference. It actually can reverse metabolic disease for way cheaper than medication and better. Because, I mean, think about, I mean, if you have fatty liver, which fatty liver now is the number one cause of cirrhosis. So end stage liver disease, essentially. It's past alcohol. I mean, it is mind boggling that this thing has become such an issue. And, you know, you can pay a lot of money, get a lot of imaging scans, just to tell you have fatty liver, and there's nothing to do. There's no medication for it, except for things to get the weight off, except for diet changes like this, which has been shown now on MRI scans and, you know, by clinical studies that this will actually start reversing metabolic disease.
Yeah.
Yeah. But Melissa, okay, so now people are listening. They're like, oh man, this is awesome. But we'll start with what would this look like? A breakfast, lunch, dinner, Melissa. So let's say what you eat. What do you eat?
Okay.
Breakfast, lunch, dinner?
Yeah. So, and today is probably a pretty decent example because it can just show you exactly how easy this is because I did not give myself any time or preparation today for food. It's Thursday. We're recording. I usually have my life together Monday through Wednesday. And then from there, I'm just kind of flying by the seat of my pants.
To survive. Yeah.
Yeah. So this morning, rushing out the door, I had a piece of whole wheat toast with peanut butter, literally ate it on the way to work. But on the days that I do have, you know, give myself more time, I usually do some type of whole grain cereal, which, lately has been some sort of granola, either just a simple one without a lot of added sugar or, homemade, which is not that hard to make. With some blueberries, soy milk, and walnuts. So that's kind of my go-to morning, unless I'm rushing like this morning and then it's toast, you know, something more portable. And then for lunch today, lentil soup out of a can.
Nice.
You know, just something that you can keep on the shelf, and when you're rushing out the door like I was this morning, I grabbed it and went. So that was easy. But most days when I do prep ahead, I like to do salads or some sort of bowl at lunch. So usually some leafy greens, some sort of bean or, you know, some type of legume. And then other veggies. It can be anything. So,
and I saw you have a little like container that separates the dressing and stuff
it's
like
awesome.
that.
Yeah. So it's one of the, like I think it's like the bento brand. This is not sponsored. But
That's
if
right.
you want to send more bento bowls, please.
That's right. We'll review that for you.
So yeah, the bottom holds your like leafy greens, and then on top you have your little compartments for your toppings. And you can even, if it's something like a taco salad or something, you can even heat your toppings and then put it on your greens. And there's all kinds of things that you can do with it. But yeah,
Nice.
I use those quite a lot. So that's breakfast, lunch, and then dinner. It really just depends. That can be a little bit more hard because of family preferences, because we have picky children.
Girl, it's a struggle. It's a first world problem.
Exactly. But I mean, really can't ever use that as an excuse. I mean, really, if they don't eat their vegetables, I will. So, but last night, what did we have? Oh, salmon. My husband grilled some salmon, so we did that, some rice, and a salad. So pretty easy. But even if you're trying to kind of spin things a little bit more plant-based on like a regular night, let's see, I always use tacos as an example because everybody in my family loves tacos. I mean, who doesn't like a taco
girl.
night?
They have a whole day, like Taco
I know.
Tuesdays. Yeah.
And we always do it Tuesday night. So, but even with that, you know, you can do all your taco toppings, but have maybe black beans or pinto beans as kind of your base rather than the meat, or to kind of trick your family into eating a little bit less meat and more, you know, beans, veggies, things like that. You can even use half of the meat that you normally would use, and then add your beans into that. So it's nice, you know, bulks it up really well, but you're really kind of reducing your overall meat consumption for the week. So there's just little tricks like that that you can do that is not hard. I think when people are going more plant-based or more, you know, Mediterranean or whatever, they really feel like it's got to be complicated and you've got to do like all the, like, you know, veganize everything and the meat substitutes and all this stuff. Really, you just kind of change or bulk up the foods that you would be eating anyway. So if you normally have meat and beans and veggies for your taco night, just lean more on the beans and veggies as your toppings rather than piling on the meat. So
Yeah, I mean, Melissa, everything you mentioned there, it wasn't anything weird.
No,
right? It's
no,
not like
I'm not like making you make these concoctions out of tofu, which I mean, tofu's good, but yeah, you don't have to like make it something crazy.
Correct. Yeah, because I heard people say things like, well, I look at that list, I'm never going to eat anything like that. But we're not making like radicchio ceviche salad. You know, it doesn't have to be anything fancy. It's just like you said, you're eating things, some are in a can, you know, things that you can literally get at Kroger right now.
Absolutely. And that's one thing about it. A lot of convenience foods can be, you know, heavily processed and not that great for you, but there's actually a lot of healthy options that you can find too. That's one benefit of the whole convenience movement, I guess, is that a lot of even healthy brands are trying to, you know, make easy, simple meals, even the frozen meals or the soups or, you know, different things that are already prepackaged for you that are really just easy to throw together. Even sometimes when I'm prepping my lunches, I'll use those little, you know, 90-second like rice and quinoa packs. And
I got a pack of those.
Exactly. Yeah. And then, you know, you just rinse your beans and chop up some veggies and throw it all together. And it's a full, very colorful, very filling meal. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, no, I think that actually was great, Melissa. It paints a really good picture for our listeners that this is not too hard. It doesn't have to be expensive. And you can start small. Like you said, you still have the meat option. You just added more beans this time and less meat, which again, like you said, with inflation, meat is so expensive.
Yeah.
Eating out, I mean, I can't even go to Chick-fil-A. It's like, am I going to Chick-fil-A or, you know, Ruth Chris? It's so expensive. Yeah. I love Chick-fil-A. But this is a time, I think January 1, obviously a lot of people want to make resolutions. This is a time to kind of consider something like this. You know, consider, or maybe not every day. Maybe instead of eating meat or all this, you know, 5-7 days a week, maybe on Monday or just Tuesday, you know, you start
do
just
a meatless Monday.
Yeah, just something small. Because we know like huge changes is really hard to say. Okay, sustain. So now, kind of getting to our last section, sustainability. Huge changes are almost never sustainable. So like we were talking, starting small, not going with anything weird.
Yeah.
And I like how you talk about picky eating. I mean, a lot of our listeners have kids. Picky eating is the devil. Like it's I don't know how our parents did it with us.
I don't know. Yeah, we just like got what we got, and that was it. There was no negotiation.
That's right.
I think our kids have learned how to manipulate,
That's right.
negotiate or something.
Girl, yeah, a lot of it. I think it's like reverse. I tell people like, hostage situation, but it's in reverse. It's like, I will give you whatever you want. Just eat this, But right, that sometimes can be challenging. Does your husband eat plant-based like you? Or?
Not necessarily. So yeah, a lot of times he knows that if he wants to grill, if he's getting a steak or something, he gets me some salmon or, at least puts some extra veggies on the grill or things like that. Same with like hamburger night. He knows to throw one of my veggies burgers on the grill or things like that. It's really just easy to like, throw that in there without changing everybody else's life. Now, in seeing me do this, yeah, he'll eat a veggie burger here or there, and really it can even be easier because when you're preparing a meal with meats, for example, you've got to make sure, of course, that you've bought it, that you've thawed it, that you've cooked it and prepped it and all this stuff. And really sometimes just veggies and all this other stuff can even be easier. Don't have to thaw anything.
That's right.
It's just like,
it's more about contamination and
exactly.
cooking temperature.
It's just, it really is, manageable and quick and easy. And yeah, some people that just really enjoy those types of foods, that doesn't mean that you can't ever have those types of foods again. But it doesn't always have to be like an everyday thing or 3 meals a day. I just had a patient this morning actually that all he did was switch his breakfast from like a more, like meat and eggs type thing to oatmeal. So 1 meal a day.
Yep.
His cholesterol, LDL cholesterol, which is what we call the bad cholesterol, dropped like 40 points. So like one meal a day.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be like all day, every day. It can be little changes like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'll put a plug for our clinic, our amazing clinic, which again, these podcasts aren't made for them. But, with our coaches, what I've realized is it's just, let's just start with something small. Like we'll do 1 meal a day. We'll do one goal. We'll just stop drinking Coke or just drink more water. Let's eliminate things. And we've seen big changes from patients' metabolic health, because of things like that, and like you said, once we figure out that it's not as complicated as it says that, and as far as the sustainability piece, yeah, you probably have to talk to your spouse or, just kind of let them know that, hey, this is something that you want to do so they don't get mad or whatever. But people can make it happen. It's doable. I mean, you could, you don't have to cook a 9-course meal for two different ways. You could you cook and you just shift it a little bit and instantly you start increasing your plant intake and increasing your variety. And that really, from a metabolic standpoint, I like to tell people, in the United States, we like vitamins, right? We like, it's got to be vitamin D or vitamin C or this one thing. But if you look at the antioxidants and the vitamins, it's more like a symphony. Like you need multiple different types, multiple different minerals, and they play off one another. And that's where you get the big benefit. It's not just like, I'm going to put one vitamin in there and think everything's going to change. Exactly. And so, like I said, you're adding variety, you're offering different kinds of fruits and vegetables. And we've got metabolic studies that show that this will help you feel better and live a better quality of life. But you just have to start.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I think when we see people adopt these dietary patterns, it is one of the most dramatic changes that we see in probably the shortest amount of time as far as their metabolic health. And yeah, they'll usually lose some weight with it. But, I've seen major reductions in cholesterol, blood sugar, blood pressure, and, people even come off their medications and things like that. So I feel like we do see a more dramatic change in the metabolic health with some of these dietary patterns. And the weight loss, is a good side effect for a lot of people, but metabolically and just their energy levels and different things like that sometimes even show up first.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Wow, Melissa, we talked for a long time.
Okay.
But this is fascinating. I feel like people hear this and it's not as intimidating anymore. And I think that's the goal. Again, we want to make this common. This is not something complex in the land far, far away. It's something that you can start implementing right just from Kroger. You don't have to go to Whole Foods or go to some of these specialty, super expensive places. You can just start small and you can definitely see benefits.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Well, Melissa, I think next week, we talked about 2 different types of eating habits. We'll be talking about exercise and some of these interesting like cold plunges, rehab things that people are doing. We'll talk about those.
Okay.
Because I tell people, I don't care how you spend you can spend your money however you want. But if someone's like, you better take this cold plunge for $1,000 because it'll make you better. We're going to dig into some of that, look at some studies, see if that actually is the case and whether you need to spend that kind of money or you can just exercise without all that stuff.
Yeah. Sounds good.
Cool. Any last thoughts, Melissa?
I think that's it. I think we covered it. And I think the take home point is that it doesn't have to be as hard as we think it is. And if you ever need guidance, just reach out.
That's right.
Yeah.
At our clinic.
Yeah.
Blue Health Baptist.
Come on.
All right. Well, Melissa, thanks again as always.
All right. Thank you.